Hey everybody, this is Nate. You are watching WASD 20, and this is going to be a video on my session prep and world building for D&D. I'm a pretty new DM, and the other day I ran my very first game in the tabletop RPG one-shot group, and I put it live on my channel. I'll put the link maybe right up there, and you can check it out, and I'll also put it in the description. If you feel like watching the game, there will be some slight spoilers here, so if you feel like watching the game before you watch this, feel free. But yeah, either way. So I'm going to start by just talking about how I got the idea for the adventure, and then talk about some of my world building along the way, and what exactly I do to prep for a session. Now, being a fairly new DM, I don't really have a real specific method for it. I'm kind of learning as I go, and I've found a couple other YouTubers to be immensely helpful for me. So this one is not really intended to be an instructional, here is how a good DM does it. This is just documenting the journey of a fairly new DM who is still trying to figure things out. So with that said, let's begin. This is my new website, wasd20.net, and on here on the resources tab, I have these adventure ideas. And this is something I worked on for a little while, for about a week or so. It was just kind of jotting down ideas here and there, typed them up and put them on a document here, and it's free on the website. So yeah, the first one is one that I was kind of excited about. I liked the idea, and I never heard it done before, of having a river chase. All right, so a river chase. So I was trying to think, what could I do that would make for a chase down a river on rafts or whatever. And what I came up with was this. The player characters are sleeping in a small town inn when they are awakened from their sleep and asked to help retrieve an item that has just been stolen by bandits from the town's chapel. A chase down the river on rafts ensues. Catch the bandits on the river or pursue them to their hideout. So for my purposes, I tweaked it a little bit, because when I was really thinking about it and planning the adventure, I thought, I don't want to give the player characters, it's just a one-shot, I want to get them right in the action. I don't want to give my players a chance to kind of question, wait, why are we doing this? So I decided to start, as we call it, in media res, or I'm probably saying that wrong, it's the Latin, in the middle of the action. So at the middle of the story. And so for my purposes, I'll show you my document here. I just typed everything up in couple pages in a Google Doc. The setup became: a ragtag group of travelers prepares for the last leg of their journey. For various reasons, they've agreed to help transport a relic from the Temple of Deltana, goddess of music and air, in Redmire, to the larger Temple of Deltana in Marinth. Marinth is a week's journey on horseback from Redmire, and our heroes have stopped in a small village inn for their last night before arriving at the white gates of Marinth. They have had shadows along the way, and they have been wary. Their mission was a secret, and only a few knew, yet the heroes cannot help but feel they have been watched. Still, they are so close to the delivery of the relic. So, that became the setup. Again, starting them in the middle of action a little more in media res. With that, I began to kind of plan out the adventure, and I went back and I edited this a couple times as I did more world building. At the start, I ran a couple one-shots a while back for my brother and my friend. I did a GM journal you can check out on some of that stuff. And what I found is the best way, and suggestions I got from others, the best way to start world building is really just to create a couple cities, create a couple towns, and start from there, and then flesh that out. So what I have here is a city or a town called Redmire. And Redmire, I decided, is about 1,500 people, and that's where their adventures took place in those games. So I had that. I also knew of a large dwarven town or dwarven city. I can't remember the name of that. I have that in another document with more of my world building stuff. And then Redmire is on a river. So I knew that, and that was going to be the starting point for my players. I didn't start them there. I started them much further along, but that is hypothetically where they began their journey. So I began to kind of flesh things out. If it's a religious relic, we need a god or a goddess. So I created this deity Deltana is her name, and she is the patron deity, or patroness, I suppose, of Marinth, the Great White City, as it is called. She is the goddess of air, the clouds, and music. And I knew I wanted to do something with music because, I don't know, I just liked that idea. And I think that if I run a campaign in this world, music is going to be a very big theme. And actually, bards are going to play a very big role in this. And I have kind of a different take on bards, but more to that in another video to come, I am sure. So, suggested domains in case anyone did decide they wanted to be a cleric or a paladin of Deltana would be light and knowledge. Alright, the town of Redmire, about 1,500 people, mostly humans and dwarves, located on the Stoneglow River. The town is a newer settlement, about 150 years old, nestled closer to the Dwarven Mountains in the northeast than to other human settlements. The rapid growth of the town is due to the investment and entrepreneurship of some key figures in the tanning, leather, and textile industries the town has become known for. The presence of the tanning industry gives the town a foul smell to newcomers, but the locals have become accustomed to it. So kind of a chemically smell or something. The ancient methods of tanning leather was pretty bad. The PCs won't actually be here in game, but this was where their journey started. So that's that town. Even though they're not spending time there, I just knew more about that town because I already had it developed. The city of Marinth, I don't really have that well developed yet. But here's what I do have, and this was all created new for this adventure because I needed. They're taking it from Redmire to a bigger city, so I created the city of Marinth. The city of Marinth is a bustling metropolis on the shore of Lake Marindal. The largest city for miles around, it has become a center of trade and learning. The residents of the region often refer to Marinth as the White City because of its large white gates, adorned with finely carved and interweaving mammoth tusks. So that's just a little, just kind of came up with that, pulled it out of thin air, and went with it. Now, where they're starting, I didn't really have a name for it. I don't even think I mentioned it in game. Maybe I did. But just a little hamlet. I mean, this is really tiny. There is one inn that is also kind of the general store, and it's the only business in this little place. And this is like their last stop before going to Marinth. Tiny hamlet. There's like maybe 5 houses or something like that, and then the inn, and some surrounding farmland where it's very sparsely populated. So Farrell's Dock, I called it because Farrell is the name of the innkeeper there, and there's a dock on the river, the Stoneglow River. All right, so that is population 48. Yep, very small. All right, next up I made some NPCs, and then we'll get to the actual adventure here, which is pretty brief. So the NPCs. Odaris, and I think that I used for creating my NPCs, I used the 5e Dungeon Master's screen, and where did I put the actual screen? There it is. So it's got a pretty cool name generator. Just lots of good NPC stuff here in the 5e Dungeon Master's screen. So I'll show this here. You can kind of see, it's not going to focus very well, but you can see some of the basic info, name and characteristics, and it's got ideals, bonds, flaws, characteristics, name generator. So yeah, pretty useful. And I used that for my NPCs, and I also kind of pulled some stuff from the Dungeon Master's Guide, which has a section on building NPCs, which I found pretty useful. Let me find the page number a second here in case you want to check that out. So the section in the Dungeon Master's Guide that you'd be looking for creating NPCs is Chapter 4, which starts on page 89. And yeah, there's some good stuff that the Dungeon Master's screen didn't have, like NPC appearance and NPC abilities, talents, mannerisms, stuff like that, ideals. So it does have some overlap, but there's a little bit more here in the DMG. So I kind of referred to both, and I didn't really flesh them out too much But I did roll for some stuff and at least had the ideas in my mind about what I wanted to do with the NPCs. So Odaris is an old human priest of Deltana. He is, probably about 70 years old or something like that. So he's getting up there in years, maybe 80 years old even. He is absent-minded. He is a people person. He loves his special place. He has foolhardy bravery. He has ragged clothes, dirty clothes, and he plays the flute. And I also put in a note here just about how he might talk. So he has an old, weary voice with an English accent, which I don't do that well. But anyway, he didn't talk like Nate, if you know what I mean. So I actually ended up reading the narration here, the setup in his voice. So something like this. A ragtag group of travelers prepares for the last leg of their journey. For various reasons, they've agreed to help transport, etc., etc. So that was Odaris. Then I also needed a priestess who would be receiving the object in Marinth. So I ended up deciding on Mother Elaine here. I like to keep some gender balance and have some, strong female leads as well. And so the High Priestess, she is young. She's probably like a third of Odaris' age, so she's probably about 30 years old or something like that. So she's very young, but for some reason, Deltana favors her. And I didn't write all this in there, but I had this idea that, she somehow rose through the ranks very quickly and has some special connection to the goddess Deltana. All right, so she's the high priestess of the cathedral there. She has kind of a detached nature, a little bit otherworldly, and I tried to portray that with her voice, that I can't even think how I voiced her now, but very detached and aloof, but very friendly as well, almost like the good witch in The Wizard of Oz or something like that. It's kind of how I imagined her. So, yep, maybe a bit cliche there. But those were the NPCs I decided, and I actually kind of formed them after I wrote my adventure in a little bit of detail. But here's a little more detail that I wrote in here, and this isn't all super organized, but I wanted to ask the characters after I read the setup up here. I decided, okay, I'm going to have the characters describe what they're doing as they prepare for the day. So that was kind of my way of introducing their characters. Instead of just saying, tell us about your character, tell us a little about your character and how would they be preparing for the day as they are getting ready to leave. And then I also did a bit of a flashback scene. So I didn't really write this in here. But this was a flashback. So as they're getting ready, I said, okay, after your players are done, after the characters are done getting ready for the day, and they all are on their way downstairs or whatever in the inn, and they remember something that happened last night. It was very late last night, and so they have this vague memory. Oh yeah, the priest who they are traveling with, Odaris, had revealed to them what the relic was. Before this point, it had been locked in a wooden box, a little chest, and he pretended he didn't have the key. But now he unlocks it, and he says, "This book was rumored to have contained the lost histories of Deltana. There is still so much mystery. Yet, unfortunately, it contains these scratches I am told are mystical, or I'm told are musical notes. I know music," and he pulls out a flute and he plays a little bit. "And these are no notes I can read. But Mother Elaine of the Temple should be in Marinth, knows things others do not. Perhaps she can decipher this code and give us the song." All right, so I pulled this way of doing things from Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice. I watched his DM prep, which I'll put a link to that one in the description, because that was really helpful for me. I'd never really seen how a DM does it. And I will say that Barker from Be a Better Game Master had a really good one too, about how to really make a place feel alive and how to describe it and how to evoke a certain feeling from a place, which I wanted to put more of that in here, and I just kind of ran out of time. This was some of the basics for me. So scene 1 was the hamlet at Farrell's Dock and the inn there. And scene 2 was the river. Scene 3 was a small ghost town, which I didn't really develop that well. And then scene 4 is their arrival at Marinth. So this is already done and over with. You can see I just ran out of time, and I didn't have time to type up much. I wanted to, but I think sometimes that works in your advantage when you don't have much. And because it kind of forces you to improv a little more. And a lot of it was just up here, and that kept me present in the game rather than looking at my paper. In fact, I hardly looked at my paper at all. It's really more of a security thing for me than anything else. So, scene 1, I have in here that the players would be getting ready for the day. And again, I didn't write much here, but I just had what would draw them outside to the chase. Well, they're in the inn, they're getting ready, the priest has awakened them very early, and now they hear a clash of steel, and the priest has basically been mugged as he's preparing the cart and the horses, and these orcs have come, and they have stolen the relic. So, the orcs flee across a short clearing onto rafts, and a chase ensues. And this part was really, I'm going to be doing a GM journal on this too, so I won't get into too much detail, but it was not very well thought out on my part. Hey everybody, Future Nate here, and me from the past got a little bit too rambly on the topic of the chase and talked for like 5 minutes, so I'm going to cut it and summarize here. I think that the chase scenes can be done well in Theater of the Mind, but I didn't do it very well in this case because I made it too much like standard movement, standard combat and action and initiative order and all that, and what it amounted to was having to constantly keep track of different distances. I had trouble keeping track of the distances myself. My players had trouble keeping track of how far am I from this guy and how far am I from this other guy, and certain, the party was not really all together and the orcs were not really all together, and it was just a little bit too much. So I think that using the chase rules from the Dungeon Master's Guide actually probably would have been smarter, even though it was a river chase and it would have been a little tricky. I could have house ruled it and made it work, or just house ruled it in some other way. Anyway, live and learn. I'll probably get into the nitty gritty and maybe even do a separate video on chase scenes in RPGs, or perhaps just mention it in my upcoming GM journal. So, I think the players still had fun. I think they told me that they liked that part and it felt very alive and dynamic, so that was good, but I still feel it could have been done better. So, back to me from the past. Then, for the chase down the river, I ended up deciding that I was going to have monkeys and crocodiles, and I got the idea from some of the Provoker guys when I was talking to them and running ideas by them, to have the monkeys be screamers, I think Matt called it, and I thought that was a great idea. So I just have this idea that the players have to succeed on a Constitution check or be deafened, because these monkeys have these piercing screams. They're like howler monkeys that get really loud. All right. And other than that, I took the baboon stats from the monster manual. All right. And then I also had crocodiles, which I didn't end up using in game because I wanted to speed things along. And well, to be honest, I actually just forgot. Yep, I didn't end up using the crocodile, but that would have been kind of a cool thing to add, just to have like one of the, especially it would be cool to have, just for flavor, one of the orcs on the rafts ahead. You just see them get grabbed by these jaws and sucked under, and then maybe one of them gets, takes a chomp at one of the PCs too, as their raft goes by. Or who knows, maybe there could be 3 crocodiles that come out. And so I just kept that handy, and I could have used it probably, but it probably worked out best that I didn't because we're getting short on time. Then I also had bookmarked in here Ogre, because I wanted kind of a big bad for when they got to scene 3. So I wanted the orcs to stay ahead of them, and I might have railroaded a little too much to make sure the orcs stayed ahead of them, because I wanted them to arrive at this small ghost town. Now, only really one of the orcs made it to the small ghost town. 2 orcs stayed on the upper ridge, and once they got off, and they were trying to hide, but they didn't hide very successfully. They were trying to surprise the player characters and maybe protect their druid boss. All right, and that didn't work out so well. They ended up biting the bullet. So they get there. I put in some kind of descriptive stuff here: the sweet smell of mud and fertile grass and skunk weed. And I didn't end up using that very well. I didn't look at my notes. But as the players get over the ridge where these orcs have landed, they've gotten out of the river. They see ahead in the clearing this kind of an old habitation of some kind. 5-6 houses, what used to be maybe an old town that is now overgrown by the woods. And so that is where they had their encounter with the ogre and the druid. And I had this idea that maybe the injured, an injured orc that got chomped on by the crocs would be in the middle of the clearing, kind of like bait for the PCs, and then the others would rush in as the PCs went maybe to take out this final orc. But that didn't end up working out, and I kind of forgot to look at my notes for that part. So that was the combat. It ended up going pretty well. You can go watch it if you feel like it. I thought it was a lot of fun. The river scene, again, the distances thing was not great, but it is what it is. Then I ended up kind of fast-forwarding it to, okay, they've recovered the relic, they beat these guys, and they make it to Marinth. And I ended up fast-forwarding quite a bit. That, the end of the day, they make it to Marinth. And, the crowd would be gathered here, and I kept my notes very brief, and just kind of made up some description of what Marinth might look like along the way. And based on what we had above too in my description. And as the crowd gathered, they handed the relic over to, what's her name again? Mother Elaine, there we go. And they ended up listening there as she opened the book and sang a song. And so I had the lyrics here, just some made up ancient language. Ile, ore le morsa, ine thrunsa ile. All right, so I don't know what that means, but it's the Song of Deltana, and it's powerful. It means something profound, trust me. All right, so that was what I did, and then I kind of added this little twist of, as she's singing, I didn't write this down again, but as she's singing, I had the idea that it would be this kind of humming that would almost make everyone's bodies vibrate, and the air would just be thick with the song. And these priests and priestesses, clerics, would pull out books, and they'd begin feverishly writing, almost as if they were in a trance. And the player characters would notice their writing, and Odaris would tell them that they're writing the histories. We've recovered the histories, some lost secrets of Deltana and the history of this world. And then he would notice they're writing about the player characters and their journey. And then his eyes would grow wide, and he would realize now they're writing about their future. And that's where I ended it, kind of on a bit of a cliffhanger. Even though it's a one-shot, I just kind of wanted to throw a little twist in there at the end. I have no idea what their futures would be, and I didn't want to get into that. And they told me afterwards, oh, that's fine, we don't care. That was awesome. All right, so I think they really liked that. I tried to really have a strong ending and a strong finish. Maybe it was a little bit DM heavy. Maybe I should have given a little more player agency in my beginning and my ending, and not kind of railroaded so much. But again, this is my first time running a game in the OSG, and I wanted to just keep it focused, keep it railroady. Props to Lloyd. I'm going to put a link to his videos down below too. Jarl DM, how to run a one-shot, and he talks about, hey, it's okay to railroad. And so I took that advice to heart, and I went for it. And if I were making this campaign, I would definitely want to get more player choice in the mix. But for what it was, I thought it worked okay. Just some other things that I had bookmarked and handy. I have the combat section. I always keep that bookmarked. The equipment section too. Keep tabs on that. And what else did I have here? Some spells. And I didn't prepare spells very well. That's one thing I definitely should have done with my druid. I should have written some spells down on a note card, and I didn't do that. So that was kind of a mistake on my part. I had to end up looking up a spell during the session, which is not ideal. I think it didn't take too long, but yeah, so, you know, I had these things handy. In terms of keeping track of other stuff, I just grabbed a scrap piece of paper, had, you know, jotted hit points down and crossing stuff out, and it's kind of a mess, but it works for me and it makes sense to me, and that's what matters. So still, you know, figuring out my method and just learning as I go. It was a lot of fun. The game was a lot of fun. There are definitely some things that I would improve in some ways that it could have been better, but I think that yeah, the players told me they had fun. They said they would love to do it again, so that was a big compliment in my eyes, and I appreciate it. And they were awesome. They were so great. They just were very descriptive, great role players, and were a lot of fun to play with. So yeah, I encourage you to check out that game. And if you have any feedback on, you know, how do you prep? Is it fairly similar? Again, this scenes thing I got from A Fistful of Dice. And I think that works pretty well for me. And you don't need much detail. Again, I thought I was going to put out way more detail than this, but it ended up mostly just being up here. Mostly because I ran out of time. But hey, it works. All right, I'm going to stop rambling now. This has been my DM prep and a little bit of world building along the way. If you have any comments, leave them below. Questions, I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you give this one a like if you enjoyed it. And everybody take care. See you next time.